Good evening. It is 7:16 p.m. on August 14th, 2020. This morning I had a notification that a very significant transaction was happening that was in line with things that I've reported on and attempted to have addressed concerning inappropriate fintech, if nothing else. Yesterday, I came across some reports that were actually provided by the United States military concerning cybersecurity. Some of these are more recent, and some of these go back all the way to 2013. These are different and distinct from other cybersecurity reports that I have found and I've been keeping track of. These reports of concern go back to 2015, and I believe that a default in connection with one of these major cybersecurity reports that was provided by the Congressional Research Service is connected to the COVID 19 outbreak. I will say now that when I was first informed of the COVID 19 declaration concerning COVID 19, that I did a review of information and reports I had already compiled concerning appropriations through last year that were connected to other things I had been researching. My concern was that in last November, there was an emergency appropriations bill that had been approved that was prior to the final decision on whether or not to impeach the president. And the terms of that emergency appropriations bill were suspicious to me because there was a time frame that was explicitly explicated as the date that would be the 1 year anniversary on the president's defense budget, the one that should have been in effect at that time. Concern then became that the day after that anniversary was the official announcement of the state of emergency. In fact, in the state of Texas, the governor made an official announcement about a state of emergency connected to COVID 19, requiring self quarantining the day after the emergency appropriations in that specific bill that was passed in late November took ended. And so these factors compelled me to look through the defense budget, and I believe what I saw and found in the defense budget was exactly what was needed as a first response to the COVID 19 situation. The situation, however, would have needed to be appropriately identified as being capable and available for drawing on those kinds of appropriations. In other words, if it had been appropriately understood, identified, and responded to as if it was a biological terrorist attack that was also connected to manipulation of radio frequency and the use of electronic weapons as a means by which to promulgate biological warfare, then it had already been appropriated. The first response had already been included in the very defense budget that I believe was a matter of contestation by members of Congress. Please note, there were Republicans and Democrats that passed that emergency appropriations bill, which is how it was allowed to be put into effect. I say this because today I did not do any electronic business. I had a benchmark. See, part of what I've been doing is keeping track of important timelines connected to my reporting efforts. I started noticing after I started reporting that at certain times, and it seems strategic, I would get awareness of a transaction connected to a report. And then I would see public notices from other people. But no one ever responded to me into my reports, and the evidence kept accumulating and the crimes kept accruing. So I began to try to do some research, and once I did the research, I found that there are specific kinds of dates that provide certain benchmarks. There's ones that are very significant in terms of releases of information for companies and corporations. There's also timelines around defaults on sureties and insurance policies backing federal agencies as well as private entities. And there are also timelines connected to litigation. And when you are discussing or considering information that has been given an open case number that's never been closed and for which you've never received a report, and also understanding that during this time frame there are public reports that are directly connected to information in those outstanding reports, then one can actually, as I have been trying to do, track what I call acts of money laundering and Sometimes these acts of money laundering actually allow for one to understand that there are moments of intervention that could preclude an escalation into what would be able to finance an actual terrorist attack. And refusal to engage in appropriate preventative measures allows for the aggregation of the kind of financing necessary to successfully execute a terrorist attack. Now, on the other hand, we are in a situation where I understand biological terrorists that have infiltrated the federal government are masquerading as healthcare, a biological attack, in order to cover up for an intentional effort to default the federal government, in order to force privatize certain sectors, while also falsely nationalizing other sectors so that they can launder toxic assets connected to those sectors that are going to be intentionally defaulted upon or have already been intentionally defaulted upon, up to and including bankruptcy. This is, I understand and believe, a pre-coordinated, premeditated economic engineering paradigm. And I believe they knew about this specifically, that there were certain intellectual authors in this that were not just exclusive to the United States, but were in positions of leadership in the United States that knew about this during the 2008 banking bailout package. As a matter of fact, if you read primary source information that was coming out from people that were involved in criticism of the way that the 2008 banking bailout was handled, sometimes explicitly and sometimes not so explicitly, you actually can find confirmation that there was early awareness that such a thing could materialize if it was not forestalled. Again, refusal to prevent allows for the accrual or the aggregation of the kind of financing that is possible for promoting or financing a terrorist attack. Now, because I wasn't online today, there were certain benchmarks I did not meet during the public reporting period. And the ironic thing is that the one has to do with a public comment to the Federal Reserve that is in the name of my LLC that I recently opened. It's the first time, and so far only time, that I made a public comment and actually listed the actual corporate entity, my actual business. But because, as a matter of principle, the specific LLC I founded was designed as an immediate response to efforts to electronically sexually assault children, even if it means I have to take the hit for the day. I cannot cooperate with electronic sexual exploitation of children. If there had been an appropriate response at any level of jurisdiction for which such responses and remedies were available, that wouldn't have happened. And I was prepared because I prepared an outline of what I would have needed in order to make the benchmark today. I already had it ready. My intention was today to allow myself to work and use the available energy and whatever else was possible for today and do what I needed to do to have a comprehensive written report meant for the end of the deadline. But I could not, because I understood that what was happening with elements of my identity that had been stolen had been connected to sorts and types of financing that could potentially be used for a terrorist attack and that were meanwhile doing something connected to harming the safety of children. Now, I found that. There's actually literally an event, a transactional event that occurred today that I was able to find and I was able to at least get evidence on. And I'm not going to discuss that here. But what it does is directly reference a voice file I did on the anniversary of a Supreme Court ruling regarding a case before the Burger Court. This has been happening for a long time. I try to keep the anniversaries of certain major Supreme Court cases that I understand have had transactional moments connected to my life on certain benchmark dates. I made an extended voice file of this. Who acquired my voice file on Beto versus Crouse on the anniversary of the decision and allowed for a simulation at an actual Buddhist temple today, attempting to launder whatever was going on with the police response through the ISD building right across the parking lot. Because the rest of that simulation is the kind of thing that literally aggregates into acts of terrorism that have involved collateral damage in the form of actual children. That actually happened today instead of me being able to do what I needed to do to fulfill this report, right? Somebody else wanted to talk about real estate.